Hi everyone, my presentation will be on epilepsy. What is epilepsy? Epilepsy is a neurological disorder that is caused by abnormal brain activity, which then cause seizures, unusual behaviors, and loss of awareness. It could happen to anyone at any stage of the lifespan. The most common treatments for epilepsy are medication, surgery, and other treatment includes diet change and electrical nerve stimulation to the brain. Seizures are the main signs of epilepsy. They could last from seconds to minutes. It is important to note that seizure does not mean that it is epilepsy. Seizure is just a single occurrence, whereas epilepsy is a neurological condition that causes at least 2 or more unprovoked seizures. Seizures are classified into 2 categories, generalized and focal seizures. Generalized means that it involves all areas of the brain, whereas focal seizures is just one area of the brain. And please note that everyone can experience seizures differently. There are no identifiable causes in half the population with this condition, but some of the common causes include brain conditions such as stroke and brain tumor, head trauma such as TBI, prenatal injuries such as loss of oxygen during birth, genetic and developmental disorders such as ASD and Down syndromes. All of these can cause epilepsy. My very first source is a TED Talk by Sitawa Wafula. She has lived with epilepsy since she was 17 years old. Her first ever seizure episode happened in school. Her left hand started jerking, and she became the center of the attention of the whole class. Epilepsy affected her social life. She had to drop out of university. She got fired from her first job because of her seizures, and she was living in denial and frustration. She described it as feeling lost and even lost the will to live. So she began writing a blog and connected herself with the epilepsy community where she felt heard and seen. Her seizure reduced drastically. She created Kenya's first free mental health and epilepsy support line, and now she continues to do things that she was told couldn't. I could feel her sorrow as I watched the TED Talk, because epilepsy has affected her in so many ways. Her entire life changed because of this disorder. She was no longer able to engage in occupations that brings her joy. It frustrates me when she mentioned that she got fired because of her seizure. Not only the workplace did not offer help, they did the complete opposite. Prior to hearing her story, I had always assumed that disability discrimination law would protect and help people with disabilities to overcome barriers, but it seems like that's not always the case. Through Swata's story, I now understood the importance of social support group, as it can really help individuals to cope with stress, connect with others so that they don't feel isolated in this case, it brought light into her life and the will to live again. My second source is a blog written in the Epilepsy Society. Chris is diagnosed with primary reading epilepsy. His first seizure happened at age 15, where he found his jaw jerking, unable to breathe, and then he lost his consciousness. He decided to study English literature because of his interest in stories and books. However, his seizures affected his occupation. He refused to seek for help because of the fear that he might have to quit university. He later found out that he was unable to function in jobs that require intense linguistic activities. In his mid-20s, he sought for help, and he was diagnosed with primary reading epilepsy. And his medication helped him control his symptoms and allowed him to achieve his dream career and have a family. However, he still struggled with reading stories to his son, as it is a trigger to his seizures. Aside from the epilepsy that created barriers in doing occupations that he enjoyed, I knew that it would affect the person psychologically as well, but I was unaware of the fact that some people could be in denial of their condition and do not want to seek help because that would confirm their condition and it might become a label for them. I noticed that epilepsy can also have a chain effect to the person's social context. In this case, it was to his son. As his son grew up, he may feel a lack of connection with his father because his father was unable to read to him for longer than 5 minutes. Less time for social bonding. However, I'm really glad to hear that Chris' symptoms are under control with his medications, and it allowed him to achieve his dream and create a family. My last source is a documentary about Zach from YouTube. Zach is 19 years old. He experienced his first seizures at 6 weeks old, and he was diagnosed with epilepsy then. Zach is nonverbal, requires assistance to walk, and has cortical visual impairment. All of his ADLs and IADLs are affected due to his epilepsy. Zach's parents have brought him to multiple hospitals for testing and tried all the medications, but none of them work. So they felt that the medications stripped away Zach's personality, so they have stopped them. And Zach seemed to enjoy music and socialization with his peer at the school setting. For me personally, this might probably be the most heartfelt documentary on people living with epilepsy. Prior to doing research and learning about epilepsy, I have always thought that it only includes seizures, but people are still able to be independent. I did not think that the most severe type of epilepsy can result in complete nonverbal, require assistance to do all ADLs and IADL, and even visual impairment. My heart was deeply saddened to see the effect that it had on Zach's family and Zach as well. As family members, they will have a difficult time understanding or hearing Zach's thoughts and feelings. Everything that the family does is based on the interpretation of Zach's behavior. Zach's parents also expressed their concern and worries about his future as he gets older. There were some portions of the documentary which I don't appreciate what the mom was saying in front of Zach. Just because Zach is unable to express, he still has feelings and emotions like anyone else. As parents, I don't think they should talk him down in front of him. I can understand where the parents are coming from, but they should also refrain from speeches where they compare Zach with other neurotypical children. And personally, as a healthcare provider, this story was difficult for me to watch because Zach was unable to advocate for himself, and he has to rely on his caregiver to make decisions on his behalf. Through all these first-person experience of people who are living with epilepsy, it helped me understand how their day-to-day life is greatly impacted by the disorder. It reminds me of the biopsychosocial model, that all three areas can be impacted. Biologically, epilepsy can cause limited body functions and contribute a lot of frustration and anger psychologically. Our society still has stigma and discrimination towards people with disabilities, especially when others are only seeing the effects of the disability, such as hand or jaw jerking, and not knowing what the disability is, and the term incapable became a label for people with disability. This information enabled me to look into how epilepsy and seizures can interfere with one's life. In my future practice, I hope to show clients that they're not defined by their disability or the society, and remind them that they should continue doing things that brings them joy. And here are my references. Thank you for listening.